of art. Yes, shout outs to Stardale's Women's Group. That was amazing. The score, just so many moments. The storytelling in general, though, it was incredible. Thank you so much. One more game, round of applause. Yes, everyone at home, air horns, like pyro. That was amazing. Thank you Siggy, so much. Okay, so now we are at the moderated dialogue. This is the learning time where I put like my, I don't know, my learning tie on. I don't wear ties, but if I, I should get a learning tie. Again, so strap in. We have some amazing people here, part of the panel, and I'm just gonna get into this and start firing off questions. And there's gonna be information, just like there was already in the chat. There'll be information to watch some of that video again that just played. Again, beautiful video by Stardale's Women's Group. Shout outs to y'all. Filmmakers, storytellers, like what? That was awesome. Only in a high school? Oh my gosh, like what am I doing with my life? Like just take my job. You should be here moderating this conversation. Why am I here? Like you already but yeah, thank you. So I got a few questions for you actually. So if that's cool. Yeah? Okay, all right. We get to meet the storytellers right now behind. Can you imagine if I went to a movie like and watched a movie, then right after I could like ask those famous people for questions, like right. And here I get, this is great. So, all right. So first of all, I have a question for Brooke.
Yes.
So what inspired the young women of Stardale to produce such an impactful video, especially on racism?
What inspired us is like the prejudice Indigenous people, especially women, face on a daily basis. It's honestly like it's so prevalent, and like bullying at a young age, like in school, like just the direct racism and like the indirect racism that happens, and like the impacts that it has later in life. Like for me personally, like um I just hated myself, just the fact that I like was indigenous, and like I would be so embarrassed of my own heritage. And Stardale has it helped me embrace who I am, and now I'm activating I'm being an activist on this. And like what also inspired us like to remove all the hurtful stigmas that indigenous people have. Um, yeah.
You for that really honest and vulnerable answer. And I think some of the best art comes from that, just comes from being honest and vulnerable about what you've been through. I'm really, really glad that you found Stardales and you're a part of it because seeing you proud of where you come from is really great to see. And it's obviously working. People are hearing you and they are seeing you right now. 86,000 people in the room right now all just watched it. So that's incredible. And again, amazing job. Um, okay, thank you. And so I have a question for Eve now, if that's cool. Um, what did you hope to achieve by producing the video? So you think you already touched on a little bit, Brooke, but what did you specifically try to achieve for this video?
Um, my hope for the film is to shine some more light on um the issues Indigenous people have struggled through, and I hope it inspires Indigenous people to want to create more opportunities for the media to engage and have a better understanding of these difficult situations and break down boundaries and show more of our beautiful culture instead of just the negative sides, just like some positive to it as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I think that's like so important for media and obviously, as you said, for Indigenous folk who create art to get more inspired to do that too. And I think that's how it works. Sometimes you might not get the opportunity, but you're creating it for yourself. And I think that's really beautiful and very brave. So thank you both, even Brooke and Stardales, for such an amazing piece. Okay, so we're going to keep this panel going. There are a few members of this panel that I have questions prepared for as well. Amazing people with just like, you'll see their bios in the chat, but they've done amazing work in anti-racism in their respective communities. And so I do want to hear a little bit about the work they're doing and the folks we have in the room. And all of you back home, remember there's info in the chat to find more connections and resources for these specific people. But the next question I have is for Kimberly. Hello, Kimberly.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. Sorry. Yeah, I know. Sorry, there's a delay. I mean, I said hi, and I was expecting a response for everybody, but you still had to unmute your mic. My bad. Hello, Kimberly. Thank you so much for being here. I have a question for you now about your foundation, the Hua Foundation. Could you describe some of the work that Hua Foundation does to address anti-racism?
Yeah, first and foremost, it's not my foundation. I work for them. I really appreciate the energy you're bringing to this. And thank you to the Starred Elements group for entering us into this discussion. But yeah, before I introduce some of the work we do, I'd like to introduce some of who I am. So my name is Kimberly Wong. I work as the Race and Equity Program Manager at Hua Foundation. The majority of our work occurs on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, also known as Vancouver. And my ancestors first came here 5 generations ago from southern China, some as indentured laborers to work on the Canadian Pacific Railway, and others who came over during the era of the Chinese Head Tax and Exclusion Act. So much of my knowledge is informed by this context. So first and foremost, Hua Foundation tries our best to ensure that our work is not only about the hate that our community is facing, but also to broaden the conversation and recognition that white supremacy, colonialism, and other systems make it so that things like the uprising hate that our community has experienced, particularly during the pandemic, is a symptom of these larger systems, and that they will continue to cycle if we do not address these things systemically. So a lot of our work is driven by youth in the Asian diaspora, and speaks to our experiences as racialized settlers. And that's a term, racialized settlers is a term that we often use to nuance our work and our identity and our positionality as both people who are marginalized by systems like racism and white supremacy, as well as people who benefit from being things like settlers on unceded territory, who may possess a different kind of mobility, for example. It's also important to note that we're a diverse community and we are not a monolith. It's important for us to recognize this, especially when anti-Asian racism is often seen through a largely East Asian lens only. So, holding space for others like us to learn about and share in these experiences that are often unrecognized and erased, like you said, so that we can collectively heal and work to educate others is one of the core principles of what our work aims to do. So I think that everyone on our Hua Foundation team has benefited from the program space that Hua Foundation has held for nuanced conversations about culture that have allowed us to both ask and answer questions about our identity, to learn about where our own power and privilege come from, before being able to comfortably enter into spaces where we are asked to, for example, speak on behalf of our entire community or represent all youth from the Asian diaspora, because this personal reckoning with race and culture and the reflection and exploration around our own belonging has allowed us to better understand our community in all its diversity so that we can advocate for our community and navigate white systems that strive to dictate racialized people's existence. So I can speak about our programs for hours, but a couple of highlights for you. The Asian Community Convener Project is a provincially scoped project and is an example of how we are committed to working on a systemic level. So it's a project that works to collect information on anti-racism work across BC Asian diasporic communities to establish a baseline understanding of where and how anti-racist work is being advanced by Asian community organizations. Of course, recognizing that there are many approaches to addressing and combating systemic racism. So we have hired youth coordinators from the respective Asian communities to interview these organizations and to learn about their work. And that includes establishing connections and relationships to facilitate community collaboration and hopefully therefore less replication of work, to move from white-centered forms of anti-racism towards systemic change and justice, while also meeting them where they are at every step of the process, and also to support the community capacity of this sector, because we believe that a resilient and collaborative network of anti-racism organizations is essential in addressing systemic racism. Shifting gears, for the Lost in Translation cohort program, we hired students to be peer facilitators to organize workshops with their peers to explore complex and collective feelings of things like grief, gratitude, and hope in using art-based methods of healing. So through this program, we thought about how the loss of elders and knowledge or cultural holders impacted young generations of Asians whose connections to their culture was complexified by isolation and distance from elders, or by losing them altogether, whether through loss of physical communication or by means of them passing. We also worked to start and pass off mutual aid programs and campaigns, like the Chinatown Cares grocery delivery program, which delivered subsidized groceries to elders in the neighborhood, many of whom were scared of going out because of racism against elders who are Asian, and also because of class means. And we also started the vaccine clinics for elders in the neighborhood, both programs to help build capacity within our communities and to advocate for agency and self-determination. In our near future, we'll be starting a free group therapy program for Asian youth, as well as a language access research project with partners across the Asian diaspora. So our scope is very broad, and we have a particular interest in supporting cross-sector and cross-industry collaborations, as well as across communities, working with youth to ensure that they are a part of this process at every step of the way, including across racial, ethnic, and class divides to build solidarity with one another. Because again, our community experiencing, blatant racism is a symptom of the white supremacist system that was built to control and put all racialized communities in a hierarchy. I'll end it there and leave you to continue your conversation with these other great panelists.
Wow, Kimberly, thank you so much. That's some amazing work by your foundation. Obviously, like as an Asian person too, I mean, like I totally relate to the idea of like having to speak on behalf of like a huge continent with like so many different kinds of people that like, don't even like there's totally different cultures within that. So I totally get that position and role that you're in, but like I think you obviously handled it amazingly, and you do great work in your foundation and all of the programs, the delivering the groceries, and also the Lost in Translation. I think that was the name of the program before. I would love to join that. Like if I was like, right, like I don't know anyone else. I don't know. That sounds like it totally fits in terms of like what I want to get from a program too, especially as a young person, but just in general. But yeah, thank you so much. WA Foundation sounds amazing. And also just to remind everyone here, there's a Q&A portion if you'd have an opportunity to ask Kimberly more questions about WA Foundation later on in this. But thank you so much, Kimberly. Okay, cool. Let's keep this going. Wow, amazing people in the room. As you can tell, like how did CRRA or CRRF or whatever the abbreviation is get all these amazing people? It's wild, but I think it's just because those people are available and really nice and want to be here and lend their time, and I'm very appreciative of that. But also, how'd you do it? Like these are like the Justin Biebers of anti-racism activism, but like cooler, I guess. I don't know if you think he's cool. Okay, next up, I have a question for Fatah. Hello.
Hi, Patrick.
How are you?
Doing great.
Great. I love that painting behind you. It's very pretty and it matches your shirt. I don't know if you did that on purpose, but it's working. Oh, you didn't do it on purpose? Okay, all right. Well, it's working.
No, I had to move, and it just, I guess it fits.
Okay, it does fit. It does fit. It looks good. I got a question for you. Relate to your foundation, Urban Alliance on Race Relations. So it offers a unique mentorship program. Can you tell us about the program and how it's increased civic engagement amongst youth? So I'm curious about that program specifically.
Yes, absolutely. So hello, everyone. I just wanted to first say that it's a pleasure to be here virtually with all of you and learn from leaders across the country and hear about these awesome initiatives like the ones that have been shared so far that are being done to address racism and lift youth voices. So as Patrick mentioned, my name is Fatah, and I am the Diversity Youth Fellowship Coordinator at the Urban Alliance on Race Relations, which is a nonprofit organization that has been doing anti-racism work for over 40 years. And one of our central programs that I kind of want to speak on today that we offer is a Diversity Youth Fellowship Program. This program seeks to address barriers to employment that are faced by racialized youth. So the Diversity Youth Fellowship Program is a leadership development and political internship program that provides highly motivated racialized youth with a paid placement opportunity in the office of a member of council at City Hall at the City of Toronto. And they become city staff, they get to work in the office with councillors and or the mayor, and they get firsthand experience of what municipal politics, municipal governance is all about. These youth fellows work as councillor aides, they connect with constituents, they do advocacy and communications work, they attend committee meetings, engage in research, and even get to write policy briefs and policy motions that end up impacting some of the decisions that we make at the city. In addition to this paid placement opportunity, these racialized youth fellows get trained on a number of topics, from community organizing to effective communications and so on and so forth. They're provided with mentors, and they also get to work on an independent community project that seeks to build a bridge between the communities they represent and City Hall. Right now, the Diversity Youth Fellowship is made up of 4 unique programs. So we call it the Diversity Fellowship. It's an umbrella term, but there are 4 unique programs, and they are the Muslim Youth Fellowship, the Black Youth Fellowship, the Tamil Youth Fellowship, and the Filipino Youth Fellowship. And they serve these 4 respective communities. Since 2018, more than 60 fellows have graduated from these programs, with another 29 that are expected to complete the program this year. And the goal of the program is to address employment barriers that a lot of racialized youth face, and also to provide them with a valuable career development opportunity through these paid placement opportunities in the offices of members of City Council. They get exposure to spaces of power, like at City Hall, and they provide youth with the sense of belonging, right? That they too can contribute to how policies are made and that they can contribute to the overall welfare of the city. And the results have shown that fellows, have gone on to work at different levels of government as constituency assistants, as policy analysts, researchers, advisors, and more. The program provides youth with a platform to engage in political discourse and build confidence to become future leaders and policymakers in our country. And it doesn't only help the fellows, right? It helps the offices that they end up working in, because they too benefit from the youth who represent these diverse communities and are able to better serve these diverse communities. And we hope to expand the program beyond the borders of the city into other cities. We have the goal of expanding to hopefully to cities like Edmonton, Brampton, Markham, Ajax, and Montreal, and have already begun conversations. And yeah, so this program has been successful over the past few years, and has contributed to overall makeup of the city, and has made these halls, at City Hall, a bit more diverse and representative of the city.
Thank you so much for the work you do, for talking a little bit about Urban Alliance, but also just the image of a bunch of racialized young people taking over City Hall in each one of their municipal governments. It's a beautiful thing to imagine. And so you're doing obviously amazing work. And yeah, you mentioned that also the offices benefit. I think they benefit, of course they benefit. You're putting some really smart, amazing people into their spaces. So of course they benefit, but also I think, yeah, again, this amazing work. I also heard from CRRF that there are some government officials in the room right now, and some grown-up suits in the room right now. So it's so great to know that that they're going to be a whole younger generation who's going to be meeting them soon because of your program. So thank you so much. And that makes me so happy. It makes me a little bit more hopeful for the state of affairs in the future, in general, just the political landscape, knowing that there could be more young people that reflect where I'm from and places where I'm from, and also there's a lot more places. Also, you said Filipino too, right? So shout outs to that, 1 out of the 4 AA. Thank you so much, Fatah. That's amazing. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I thought you unmuted your mic. Okay, yeah, thank you so much for that. Okay, cool. Thank you so much. And also everyone there, please, if you have any questions about Urban Alliance, please put them in the Q&A, and we'll be getting to those actually really shortly. But all the fellows who are out there currently, shout outs to you, and keep making things happen in our governments, because I think I know that it's very important. All right, so now we have a Q&A from people from here sorry, I have one more question first, and this one's for all the panelists. It's the same question, and then I'll give each of you an opportunity to answer it. But what support do you need, or even did you need, from the government or the charitable sector as youth working to combat racism? So when you yourself was looking for support from the government or to the charitable sector, what were the things you needed to get those ideas started, those things moving? So we could start with either Brooke or Eve, if anyone wanted to take the first answer.
Yeah, the main thing that, we needed to get all this started is support from other people, from other communities to, to back us up, that, and just education, like educating other people, spreading awareness and all that. Yeah, that's what got the ball rolling.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brooke. And I like that answer, support and backup, backup. Because we got this, we just need backup just in case to keep six. But in general, all we need is, support and backup. Thank you so much. That was a great answer. Kimberly, what did you need, or do you need?
Yeah, I struggle to call myself youth because I'm 26 and I'm a little bit outside of that space. But I think regardless, I've been in this kind of space since I was 16, so I have an understanding. But work on anti-racism, whether it be through cultural celebration or social policy, community organizing or otherwise, is trying to heal and undo centuries of colonization, imperialism, and oppressive systems. So it will take longer than 1 year or 5 years or a grant cycle to this work. So while we often celebrate the diversity that we have, our formal systems and structures do not reflect this diversity. And I think we have to recognize that there are systems gaps in servicing diverse communities, many who rarely interact with government and institutions. So to all of a sudden want to support and help, it doesn't really work. We need to invest in long-term trust building, and this work comes, from the community. It must come from the community, and I think that all of the speakers and panelists today have emphasized the importance of learning and acting on knowledge from lived experiences of people impacted. So, a nuanced response on funding in particular, one kind of support, long-term funding for youth to bridge generations, invest in working across communities and within our own communities. Long-term committed funding is great. Project funding, in my opinion, does not address the needs of communities harmed by systemic racism and other oppressive systems. And then just as somebody who I think came into this space as a climate justice advocate, learning about alternative governance structures and learning about, how to navigate bureaucracy, things like setting up a nonprofit and navigating societies acts. Those kinds of things, tactile hard skills, are often gatekept by people who are in power and who have been in the system, and teaching them through programs like Fatah has done for years and has talked about is a really receptive way to do this.
You mentioned a lot of things, and those are all very important. And yeah, but long-term funding for sure, right? The full investment, more money, longer. But also because what are we supposed to do with this 1-year program grant? I'm trying to fix everything, you know what I mean? All this stuff. So we need more, and that's why I loved how Fatah's here too, with their organization doing some of that work as well. But Kimberly, thank you again, and Hua Foundation for doing all that. And Fatah, what did you need, or do you need in terms of support from government or the charitable sector?
Yeah, so I think Kimberly said it very well. And on your comment about you being able to call yourself youth, I'm a year older than you, so I don't know what that says about me and my ability to call myself youth. But we can still continue calling ourselves youth. So for me, I have pretty much the same answer as Kimberly. Long-term funding, and that's because especially with programs like the one I described, at the beginning, the first year, it's a heavy reliance on community funding, donations, that sort of thing. But that same energy, that same attention from the community ends up waning, and it's not there the first year as it is the fourth year. So you might not get that sustained funding, and so this is where you need kind of government and other sources of funding to kind of kick in. And this is what's happened with us. Our funding has increased 10 times over actually this past year, and it's because of the success of the program. But it starts, of course, with community support, community funding. But again, that's, as Kimberly had highlighted very well, like that's not something that can sustain these efforts. So we need long-term solutions, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much. And yeah, no, I agree with y'all 100% on everything you are saying. And I get that too, I think when doing work in my community, to like expect them to be the ones funding everything I'm doing all the time, even though I'm trying to help that. Like, it's kind of like a weird, non-sustainable situation. And so I think support from the government is so important in that case. And community informed systemic and policy changes. Sean just repeated that to everybody. And yes, I just 100%. I'm hearing everybody. Thank you so much, all of you, for answering this question. And now I think we are getting into a Q&A portion where we'll have some questions from the audience, and they'll be filtered throughout me. So yeah, just keep it locked and keep the screens on for now. And I can just ask you some of these questions coming from the community here. So just waiting for Rosalind, one of the members of CRRF, to send some, but yeah, so I have some questions here too. All right, I got a question right here from somebody in the audience. What would you say are some first steps if you want to tackle or start a project or group to combat anti-racism? So some first steps for you if you're starting in this, you have this thing you want to do. What were some of those first steps? So does anyone want to take that one? Anyone could jump in. We can do popcorn style, whoever's in it first. Or I could choose someone. That's all good too, if everyone's too polite.
I don't know who unmuted first, but Kimberly, you can go ahead.
Go ahead, Kimberly. First steps.
Sure. So I think I appreciate hearing about Fatah's programs being specific to communities, because I think that, like, in Canada, we often learn about how multiculturalism is a pillar of our society, but I really do think that multiculturalism is something that is dictated by, the white gaze. So in other words, I think that some of the most important work that can be done on anti-racism can be done within one's own community. Learning about our own community, the power that we hold, the shame that we might hold and feel around things, the reasons why we, have certain biases. Those are important ways of learning about oneself first, looking inward, and then learning about how to be allies, for example, to communities who've experienced racism, and I'm speaking from the Asian community in particular, experienced racism in more blatant ways for a much longer time, and who've named these kinds of things that they need. And I think that that's something that Fondation has done in order to allow these youth who are questioning their belonging, questioning their identity, in order to become, members of society that really does, in a whole sense, embrace its diversity.
Really, yes, like getting to know yourself and answering some really important questions and asking some really important questions, I think is a really great first step before getting into that work. So yeah, totally agree. Yes, Fatah, did you want to add to that as well?
Yeah, very quickly. I think it's also important to find other people around you who are also passionate and who are motivated and driven, because that will help to sustain whatever effort that you're about to embark on. But before that, I would also advise you to potentially look at other initiatives that are already out there. Sometimes we love to kind of start something, but those efforts might already be underway, and so it might be a matter of you helping to build capacity and helping to build those efforts that are already existing. So sometimes that might be the best decision right before starting. But if you do find that there is a gap and those certain issues aren't being addressed, then by all means, build a team, build a plan, and find other like-minded people.
Fatah, that was really important information. Like, work with a team, teamwork, round table. That's why it's a round table, because there's all these people who could see each other's faces and they're equal. No one at the head, because it's a team, like the Avengers, but more diverse, like Knights, but more diverse, right? More diverse than both of those things. Knights and the Avengers. Okay, I have another question here. This one says, this is a question. Oh, sorry, unless Brooke or Eve, do you want to add anything onto that? Or we can move on, it's up to you.
Everything that was said is all good. I have nothing else to add to that. Sounds great.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like this, they're awesome and lots of information, and I agree with everything. How do the ideas / knowledge from youth initiatives transfer to our mainstream system? So yeah, that's the question. How do these youth initiatives build skills or knowledge or ideas that transfer to mainstream systems, which is pretty already kind of obvious based on some of the work you've been doing. But if anyone wants to give any more, like elaborate more on the transferable things that you learned from your youth programs.
For Stardale, we got the opportunity to try out many different activities, and like for example, we've tried modeling, we've done a bunch of different types of art media, we've done like this film, a bunch of things that just open the doors for us, that gives us like an idea of what we might want to do for the future, and experience. And yeah, that's pretty cool.
Very cool. And like when you win an Oscar maybe in the future, right? Like this is, well, I don't know if you, right? Like, I don't even know if we want to win an Oscar because that's, white people stuff. But if you wanted one, then you can say that you have experience from this piece that you made. So absolutely right. Just get building experience and opportunities. And it was, again, amazing piece. Like I'm still thinking about it in my head, actually. It was a really great piece. Does anyone else want to add on that question? Cool. All right. Seeing if there's any more questions coming in from CRRF. Oh, we got another one right here. Cool. Oh,
Just
sorry.
briefly.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just briefly. I think that often when youth are mentioned in these spaces, it's taught to be like a mentorship and teacher-student kind of thing. But I really think that reciprocal learning is important to center in this. We can learn so much from each other, and establishing more hierarchies, I think, is the opposite of what we're trying to do. So yeah, learning reciprocally with youth is something that I want to emphasize.
I love that, absolutely. And you get those teachers all the time who say like, oh, I get just as much from our students as they get from me. But it's like really real, like, it's real. Like that exchange is so unbelievably important. And that's why this the conference is called Lifting Young Voices, because I think they have so much to offer that will legitimately change things. And so the fact that they're getting things in return too, that's really awesome. But I feel like I just learned just as much in my youth programming as well. So 100%. Working alongside youth. Yes, alongside. Awesome. Great questions. All right, I got another question here from CRRF. Are youth initiatives budgeted in a sustainable way? So we kind of touched on this already, but we can maybe go deep into it and kind of drag the funding system even more if we want right now. Can they really maintain a volunteer to honoraria model, or should there be more investment and full-time work to support this sector? And how that looks. I think it's a pretty deep and vague, also a vague question. I think there's a lot of different angles to talking about funding, but does anyone have kind of their own take on this?
So for Stardale, there is times I can remember a couple years back that we were actually very low on funding, and we were like worried that the program would end, and like that was a big shocker and honestly quite upsetting. But I don't know, Helen, the executive, made it work. We got help from a bunch of people, and we were able to keep Stardale going with a bunch of volunteering. And it's nice to have people come together to keep something so good rolling.
Thank you, Brooke. And I'm glad that you had support, right? Like I'm glad that you have people around you that are going to try to make this go. And I'm sorry you had to deal with the worry of your program, not happening. I mean, that really sucks. Like for me, after even seeing some of the work y'all do, like I'm just like, give them all the money, like just all of it. And the fact that you had to have that moment is tough for sure. So yeah, I thank you for that answer. Does anyone else want to kind of build on that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Brooke and Eve. Yeah, I don't think many youth initiatives can sustain a volunteer model. To be honest, I think that there's definitely a need for sustainable funding. I think the concern around, Patrick, I think you mentioned, 1-year projects that are funded just for 1 year. I think the issue with things like that is that you actually probably need a whole year to kind of build trust amongst the community and get people to actually buy in into what you're doing. And so that groundwork that needs to be done in that year, if funding stops, then you kind of have to restart that, if you don't get funding the next year. And so it drastically impacts our, our ability to sustain these efforts. And yeah, try to find an advice to youth initiatives, or if you want to start an initiative, try to find organizations that have been doing anti-racism work for like decades, to try to find them and try to get them to serve as a trustee on a grant application that you might be applying for example, and to try to use the kind of the weights of organizations such as maybe CRRF or other organizations, and try to connect with them and see how those organizations can support you in your pursuit to secure additional funding. But as with our own program, the Diversity Fellowship, yes, in the beginning, again, you have a large number of volunteers that are kind of engaged and ready to commit. But with any initiative, you need people who are going to be paid for that work, in order for you to retain quality individuals, to continue the work and get them and incentivize them to put in, effort. Yeah, thank you.
Fatah, again, totally echo and hear you 100% on the need for some long-term funding. And also, like, when you're in the business of building up people and they get to a certain point in your programming where they've been built up so much, you don't want to stop them from seeking other opportunities, but it is kind of sad that sometimes an organization won't be able to support that person after they reach that threshold because that organization itself doesn't have the funding to keep them in the team. And I think, so that's a weird kind of like a conflict to deal with it. I think some long-term funding does help some of those things, is keeping those teams together. They can look forward and have a lot more foresight in what their organization can do from years to come with that support, that foundation. So absolutely. Kimberly, did you have anything to add as well on the idea of budgeting or money? Okay, cool. And by the way, in the chat, there has been a link to some grants. So just to like CRRF doing some low-key promo in the background, it's being like, we got grants, like give it to, but everyone, young person out there who wants to do some like stuff, please click on those links and get that money from CRRF. And I'm sure there's information on how to get that money. Okay, we have another question, an anonymous question from the audience for everyone. This is a question for everyone, well, I guess all of them were. With all the news about what's happening across the world, we keep talking about systemic racism. One system we need to address is the immigration and settlement services, how we can back up that sector. Historically, we all stand in different territories in Canada. How can we make the system work for all communities, looking at Canada to be a safe place from other places in the world? So this is talking about settlement and systemic racism around settlement and immigration. So yeah, does anyone want to touch on some of the, backup, I guess that's what the word they used. How can we back up that sector? So does anyone have anything to add on that question? Shout outs to immigrants. It's a big one, it's a deep one, it's a lot. But does anyone want to jump in? And one second. I don't want to touch that one. Like, okay, that makes
I'm not
sense.
an expert in that.
Yeah, no,
so I
understand. Immigration and settlement's a whole other side, right? This is again, as we know, right? This anti-racism is a very wide spectrum of a lot of different things, and we have some amazing people here who do certain things. So if no one has any questions on that, I'm sorry, any answers on that? Yeah, go
No,
ahead.
but I would say, I guess, it's first just getting knowledge on it, and that's something I probably need to do as well, to kind of see where the barriers lie, and how one can make progress. And so I guess that's what it starts with, is just kind of getting knowledge on how can we address anti-racism when it comes to immigration and settlement, finding out which level of government is responsible for immigration, and so on and so forth. I think kind of it starts with that, and then it's about connecting maybe with your local MP or MPP or whoever's kind of responsible to kind of advocate for the issues that you need to advocate on, and that sort of thing. And I'm sure there are many organizations that are doing work to address barriers around immigration and settlements. But yes, it's definitely a big area. I like to kind of stay provincial and city, but I know that's definitely important to get more knowledge on that.
Absolutely. I think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Kimberly.
You had a response?
No, oh, no, go ahead, that's you.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think I can't speak on how to make immigrant and settlement services more equitable, but I think that as people who are working within anti-racism, nuancing what an immigrant is, and the differentiation between immigrants and refugees in settlement, for example, is something that I've been learning more about. For example, a group that we work with very closely are Vietnamese youth, and they identify as refugee communities because of the way that they came here. I know that a lot of folks in the Black Canadian community have also noted that the term settler has to be nuanced, in particular when speaking about their migration to this land as well. So noting the difference between those two is something that we can do to make these processes a little bit more equitable when speaking about them.
Absolutely. Thank you for that answer, Kimberly. And also, as Fatah mentioned, there are a lot of different programs out there that are doing this work. And so I implore you all to look in more if that's what you're, especially the person who asked that question. Personally, I've done some work with like newly landed Filipino immigrants, mostly youth, doing storytelling programs where half in Tagalog and half in English, trying to help them get kind of more used to their communities and their art communities and using storytelling and the kind of their connection of poetry through Filipino culture as kind of the vehicle for helping a lot of newly landed immigrant Filipino youth. I've also done some like storytelling workshops with different refugees supported by Settlement Ontario. So there are a lot of different small programs and different kind of things going on everywhere. So I know that the work is being done. But again, I think it's a very important thing, and more of these things should be, more questions should be asked about this, and we should definitely do more research on it too. So thank you very much, all of you. Even Brooke, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I think what everyone else has said is pretty much my thoughts and opinions on it, but thank you.
Awesome. Okay, I have another question. We got about 15-ish minutes before we take our break. I'm glad we have this time to have this discussion because everyone in the chat right now is just blowing up, being like, these people are so amazing. These questions are so amazing. And within reason, because there's a lot of great stuff. Kimberly, I have a question for you. Do you have experience organizing at the intersections of queerness and race? If so, have you faced challenges as a racialized organizer in brackets, usually white, queer spaces, and how did you deal with these challenges?
Big question.
It's a good one. I like it, a really good one.
Short answer, yes. Around the other stuff about how, I think that I'll give the example of organizing in Chinatown in particular. Chinatown is a community that is made up of a lot of traditional clan associations. They're a kind of social service organization that developed because white social service organizations, when we first settled here in the 19th century, would not serve us. So they created a role for themselves in the community that would help people access things like healthcare and schooling and housing. But they're patriarchal clan associations. And I think that intersection of patriarchy and the youth organizing that has always been fundamental to Chinatowns and to cities like Vancouver, it has impacted me greatly. So I'm somebody who is very openly queer. I'm a young woman in Chinatown, and so a lot of my work has been around ensuring that the communities that I hold with both like queer BIPOC communities, for example, and in traditional patriarchal clan association spaces are able to speak to one another. So, I mean, I can go into it for a long time, but queer young femme organizing has always been instrumental to social movements and organizing. And the importance of our existence should not be undermined. And I think that, the sharing of our stories and the ability for our communities to gather as one is a really important way of ensuring that this history is not lost, and that we continue to be at the forefront of these social movements and continue to push things towards spaces of equity.
Thank you so much for that answer. And I just want to say also, I just want to I recognize that part of that question was the challenges you faced, and you touched on that, but I'm sure you can get into so many stories of the many challenges you have faced as an organizer. And I just want to applaud the bravery that it takes to continue to do this work. I think it's really important. So thank you. And I hope you continue with Hawa to provide opportunities and platforms for younger folks who may be like you as well, who are looking for that guidance as well. There you go. In the chat right there, words resonate, heart. See, told you. Thank you so much. I got another question. And this one is for Eve and Brooke. Eve and Brooke, okay, cool. What was the experience like to produce the video and to act in the video? So like a little bit about being on set and the experience. How did that feel?
Well, first it was all nerve-wracking and more like everyone was like focused on us and just kind of felt like cattle, not gonna lie, because everyone was so amazed and focused on us. But just putting our ideas down and everything into our own script and all that was fun, and it just felt more empowering, and it encouraged me more as a person to express myself.
For me, the film, it felt, honestly, it was so much fun. Being in front of the camera is definitely something that I enjoy, and I do see it in my future, hopefully, acting, because it's like, wow, you just become this like whole different person on camera. But yeah, it was honestly a really good experience, and I hope that we do more films in the future.
You both, even Brooke, for that answer. And it sounds like it was fun on set. It sounds like there was, but also sounds like there were some challenges too. But at the end of the day, the result was incredible. So I hope that you both continue to do more things like that. And also, yeah, if you want to be in front of the camera as well, y'all definitely should continue doing that, because there needs to be more like faces, like obviously like yours, in the bigger screens, right? On Netflix. We got to see this on Netflix. Who do we got to talk to? Is there any suits in the room right now that can make that happen? Let even Brick know ASAP. We have one more question from the audience. It's funneled to me, PDB, to ask you, the panel members. I work for a non-for-profit organization that is not primarily youth organized, but wants to support and encourage youth leadership from BIPMG in the community. I think that was B, anyway, B BIPOC maybe, I don't know. And my question is, Does it help when established organizations serve as a channel for youth initiatives by supporting with youth-focused grants, applications, and other mentorship support? Or is it better to let youth take their own initiatives in the community? So I guess, yeah, it's asking what is it better to have the grants and the mentorship support, or is it better to let youth take their own initiatives, or maybe a balance of both? What do you think?
I think a balance of both, because
You want that support from others, and you honestly, you need that help from another person to like really like step you up. And yeah, just having support, but also like letting the youth initiatives do the leading, but then having that backup support as well is like, that's like the best.
And yeah, the backup, right? The support. Like, I think it's like that sweet spot of being like a mentor, there to actually be there to support you and not a gatekeeper, right? Like I think there's a difference with that, I think, right? So definitely more mentors and not gatekeepers. That supports also. I mean, for someone who's been in the spoken word community coming up in Toronto, that's how it's been for us too, where it's important to know who the OGs are and to show your respect, but also to get support from them because they've done it in different ways already, and you're trying to be like them in a way. So that connection is really important, and I think it's a lot important in many different ways along many different cultures too. Kimberly, did you have something to add with that as well?
Yeah, I agree with even Brooke wholeheartedly. I think it's important to, like, Qua Foundation has an incubator program to assist groups with getting them off the ground through things like grant application help, administrative support, and mentorship, even so far as allowing folks to apply and being partners with them under like a nonprofit sponsorship, and applying for them on behalf of them, and giving them the funding and helping them create things like budgets, and understand how many program coordinators you need, understand if there's the need for like an active listener at an event. Like, asking them these questions and knowing which questions to ask is super important and helpful. I think also just knowing the way that communities work, in particular in the Asian community, the Chinese Canadian community has a lot more resources and a lot more infrastructure available to them to be able to organize for things like funding and for things like programs. And so ensuring that Fatah Foundation, for example, which is, you know, based in Chinese communities, incubates programs with and in partnership with groups like we have with the Vietnamese community, the Filipinx community, is really, really important, so that the Asian diaspora that we claim to serve is truly the Asian diaspora and not just the Chinese community.
So much. And again, for that nuanced, you know, distinguished help between different communities, I think it's just so important to continue to mention. And shout outs to the Filipinxes, like, and everyone else, but just, you know what I mean? Like, I'm the moderator, so shout outs to them and everyone else. Fatah, did you have anything else to add on this great question?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everyone, and I've seen the benefit of the combination of both within our own organization, our Urban Alliance. Each of the diversity fellowship programs, so the Muslim, Black, Filipino, and Tamil youth fellowship programs, are led by a youth who comes from the community, but they're although they have the autonomy and the ability to lead these individual programs, they are supported by an array of mentors, and each of them have a steering, like a committee to lean on, and these committees have professionals in the field, and so on and so forth. And so I think, you know, yes, it's always nice to kind of lead an initiative and as a youth, and to have that, you know, self-determination, but it's important to get help, right? It's important to get help. But I think you summarized it well, Patrick, when you mentioned, you know, not the organization is not acting as gatekeepers, right? But really letting the youth lead and empowering them. I think it is very important. Empowering them in a safe space where they can learn and grow is important. So. And the fact that you're even considering it shows that it is a safe space. It probably will be a space where youth will feel empowered just by you considering those options.
Thank you so much. And was there any last words from any one of the panel members before we go on break? I just wanted to offer one more opportunity for a last word or anything like that. We'll be seeing more of you later on, but I just want to make sure you had another opportunity to speak before I get out of here, on break, sorry. Amazing. Okay, thank you so much, all of you. And yes, everything that was said, what a great panel. And Fatah, Kimberly, I'm older than both of you. So the fact that like you all are having that conversation right now, I feel like, what the heck? Like, no, I'm still youth. I feel like I'm 12, so we're all youth. So this youth panel, I mean, no, it's okay. I'm not anymore. Even Brooke, amazing. Kimberly, Fatah, amazing work all of you are doing in your communities. Thank you so much. We are going to take a short break. But before we do that, I have a few announcements. I'm trying to keep my tone up to make sure this anti-racism conversation is like, yes, it's thrilling. Okay. I think we're all okay. Before we go to break, please be reminded that we're posting a link in the chat to where youth participants can share their message or stories for creating a future Canada free of racism. And also in the break, sorry, you hear my dog making whining noises. It means he's ready for a break too. So this is a good time for both me and my puppy. In the break, we will be sharing a graphic illustrated by Miel Young, who is a youth participant in the audience in today's roundtable. Miel is a mixed race digital artist who loves to spread messages of activism through writing and art. You can check out the artist's Instagram in the chat box. This piece was inspired by the power solidarity has and the importance it holds in communities. Miel was inspired by how minority groups support one another for a common goal of encouraging a more inclusive world. Shout outs to that. It makes a lot of sense, on theme. So we're gonna play that. We're gonna show that graphic image and take a quick 5-minute break. See you all soon, but keep it locked. We have way more to go.